Welcome back to 60 Plus Uncensored. Today, I'm joined by Federica Grazzi, founder of Mitos Relocation Solutions, a boutique consultancy that helps retirees design and navigate their dream life abroad. With a career that spans private banking, government advisory, and living in 8 different countries, Federica blends deep global expertise with a personal touch to guide people through the complex and often emotional process of retiring overseas. From visas and taxes to healthcare and peace of mind, she's on a mission to make international retirement not just possible, but joyful. Federica, thanks so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Hi, Sam. Hi, everyone. So my story, I'm an Italian. I am not retired, but I've relocated enough times probably to get some honorary status in terms of retirement relocation advisor. I live in London, and what I do is help people retire abroad. What does it mean? We were just saying retirement abroad is a very complex life change. It starts sometimes even a few years before retirement when people start asking themselves, what am I going to do? The emotional path, the practical path of, do I want to stay in the country? Do I want to start a new adventure abroad? So that's kind of where I start working sometimes with a little bit of coaching in terms of decision making. And then obviously there's a lot of practical aspects. There's some people just think about lifestyle in terms of retirement abroad. That's a wonderful big part to plan for, to dream about, but clearly the transition involves a lot more aspects. Visa, taxation, healthcare, housing and customs and driving and many other things. So that's where I step in, helping to plan to make sure nothing falls through the cracks, let's say.
Well, this is a pretty niche business, though. So, how did you get from growing up in Italy to living in London and become a specialist in retirement abroad? Like that, what's that journey like?
That's a very good question. So my background traditionally is in banking. I started my career at JP Morgan, where I was doing for many years, first private banking, so helping people on their assets, very often, in terms of cross-border policies as well. And then I moved to the investment bank where I was working with governments on tax policies. And that's kind of where I also started learning about the opportunity to optimize taxation thanks to cross-border optimization to moving abroad. That's something that perhaps is a bit more known for digital nomads. A lot of people that move to Dubai and work from there to save a little bit. But there's actually a very nice opportunity also for retirement. Several countries do offer tax incentives to attract wealthy people that might want to live there and spend there. So that was kind of the starting point professionally. And at the same time, this job was obviously paired by the interest in retirement. I was very interested for years in it. I did a lot of volunteering. I'm a trustee on a nonprofit here in the UK for active retirement, active aging. And I brought together these two niches by just speaking with people that were dreaming about it. Here in the UK, it's a very, very common thing to at least talk about. Obviously, not many people, not everyone does it, but everyone talks about it. And I realized that it was a fully uncovered niche in the sense that many people, once again, dream about it, but currently is mostly either served by Facebook groups, where there are very nice and active communities that try to help, but clearly that's not enough for many people, just asking a few questions in a forum. And then there are some immigration advisors, which are great, tax advisors, but they just cover their own niche. They don't help people make a plan, the decision making, the emotional support, connecting the dots. And most of the relocation advisors that I found were focused on B2B, so helping people moving for professional reasons. And that's where the idea came. Let's make a company that is only fully focused on this demographic, because I do think that the need of someone retiring abroad are different from someone moving abroad for work. The support is different, the services are different. And also there's just so much to offer. Once again, it's a very mobile space. Many people want to do it. Currently I'm focused on Europe, but the idea is that retirement destinations are quite global. So the idea would be to start from Europe, which is obviously the region that I know best, to expand into then also the Caribbean and APAC and so on.
Okay, so people in England are famous for like retiring abroad or like at least having a second home on the continent. So let's just start with the English. So where do they go to retire abroad? I mean, are you seeing them move a lot to France? I mean, that's where I hear they go to France, but where else do people look to retire abroad in Europe?
Some of them go to France, you're right. Some of them go to Spain, and also Portugal has been coming up over the past few years, with English and with Americans, actually, even more. Um, there have been a shift, though, because both Spain and Portugal used to be very welcoming with foreign retirees, both in terms of visas and also tax incentives, what we were saying. Clearly, these are a bit more interesting sometimes for English because of how the American tax system works in terms of taxing people even abroad. But for everyone. But the result of this, especially for Spain and Portugal, has been that so many people have come over the past decade. That real estate prices have been going up, skyrocketing. In some areas of Spain, there's kind of a little, there are more like little English communities or German communities as well, rather than Spanish, which is quite interesting. And in some areas of Spain and Portugal, there has been a bit of backlash, mostly related to housing prices, because obviously the locals have been squeezed out. And the result of this has been that the policies have been slowly restricted. So nowadays we see few more destinations still in Southern Europe that are rising in popularity, because let's say they're the new hotspots that offer the benefits that some other destinations used to offer many years ago, but with the added experience of seeing how the path has gone for Spain and Portugal. So obviously everything is a little bit more regulated. And this nowadays they include Greece, they include Italy, which is also a reason why I've kind of started from there, because besides knowing them very well, I'm Italian, my husband's Greek, but it's also really the places where everyone is starting to get a bit more interested about nowadays.
Okay, yeah. So I'm very familiar with that because I'm in real estate, and here in the United States, like it's very famous. Like, oh no, the Californians are coming, right? I mean, like we go to all these little places and drive up the home prices, and there's a lot of resentment towards Californians for that reason, and maybe some other reasons too, but certainly for that. So, and I have heard that it is getting more difficult to immigrate to Europe in retirement, like it used to be that you could like buy a condo in Spain, right? And then, get residency through that. And I guess that's no longer possible. And so I was talking to a real estate guy in Portugal, and he was saying that in Portugal, it's still possible to get residency there by investing 500,000 euros in Portugal. Is that still a thing, or is that not
So I
correct?
think what you're talking about, I think, is the golden visa, which, as you say, is an investment in some sorts of assets, which tend to include also real estate, and as a result, then you qualify for residency. So this has been a big shift because, as you say, they have tried to restrict it a little bit, both in terms of access in general, or in terms of thresholds that were required to qualify. So these are some examples that I was giving you before. So Spain, they used to have a golden visa, and now they removed it. In Portugal, it's still possible, but not through real estate in the traditional sense that it was before. So it's more related to funds, actually, to investment funds. Greece is still possible to do it through real estate, which is actually one of the few interesting hotspots in Europe, and perhaps why it's still quite popular. But they did increase the thresholds last year. Once again, learning from, I don't want to say the mistakes, but the experience of a more and like increasingly globalized world. So they used to have a minimum ticket of 250,000 euros, which perhaps for an American is really not that much. And now they increased that to 400,000 in the less popular destinations and 800,000 in the more popular destinations. The islands that you hear about, Crete, and the hot spots where many Americans want to go. So definitely there is a shift in terms of how real estate is used as a channel, let's say, to gain residency. That said, it's still possible to gain residency in other ways. Most of these countries we've mentioned, they do have, let's say it's a visa where you need to demonstrate that you can fund yourself effectively. It's called in different ways in different countries, non-lucrative or financially independent person. So what you need to demonstrate is that you have enough income or savings plus a private health insurance so that you're not going to be basically a burden to the state.
Okay. All right. So now there's also this famous thing where in Italy you can go and buy one of these villas for $1. If you if you renovate it, they'll give you a residency. Is that not a thing? Was that ever a thing?
I didn't know if I wanted you to ask or not, just because I know that it's like such a, popular and,
It's a myth, right?
and
It's a
cool.
myth.
So it is technically possible. I don't want to say it doesn't exist. It's true. It's in the legislation, but I just want to convey it's not so easy. So for €1, you can buy really something that is falling apart, and the bureaucracy to get the permits to build it, paired with the costs that you need to put to to get that renovation, they're actually quite significant. So either you really understand very well the system, you're into construction for some reason, or legislations, or perhaps it's just easier to get some still very affordable property in Southern Europe and Southern Italy, without all the headaches of having to, to build something from scratch. So it's like in practice, I still say it's kind of a myth. I don't recommend it necessarily. It's a
Okay,
bit
so
complex.
maybe not one of those for €1, but I mean, like, so does Italy have a program where you can buy real estate and become a resident, or no?
Unfortunately, not. Once again, also
No.
Italy has a golden visa, but without property. So it's once again either financial instruments or investment startups. They
Oh,
have a
okay.
few options.
Well, how much does a golden visa cost to get to Italy?
There are different thresholds. I would say that the average around 400-500K, depending on, how liquid it is, or how, let's say, yeah, the risk profile. But clearly speaking about, a retired person, not necessarily they want to invest in a startup in Italy to get residency, especially because you just need to demonstrate that you have an income of around €30,000 a year to get a visa, just to live there, lawfully with a normal visa.
So you need to have a residence, documented income of €30,000 a year, which Italy isn't too much. I think a lot of people could probably show that. I mean, Social Security will get you most of the way there, actually, for many people.
Exactly,
So,
exactly.
what countries also have golden visas? We had so in Greece you can buy a property still, and in there's a golden visa in Italy, and there's a golden visa in Portugal. Anybody else have a golden visa? Like what about like Croatia?
I'm not sure about Croatia, to be honest. I haven't heard of it. So I would probably say no. I know Malta has some, it's not called golden visa, but it's a similar type of investment. But yeah, these are the famous ones, let's say. Portugal, Spain used to have it once again, but they removed it just this year. Greece,
Right. So
Italy,
so most
Malta.
people want to
Yeah.
go to the Mediterranean. I mean, they want to go to a sunny climate. You're not finding people who want to move to like the Netherlands, right? Is
No,
that
that was never a question. I did get some questions though for Northern Italy, like at the border with Switzerland or with France in terms of alpine climate. Once again, those that are a bit more into skiing and hiking do ask to live close to, a bit cooler climates. But yeah, still a minority. I would say most people do like their sunny access, and I do get a lot of ocean view requirements, especially from Americans. Although I always tell them the Mediterranean is not an ocean, it's a sea.
Right. Well, we call it, I mean, technically, I live on a bay technically, but we call it an ocean view, even though it's a bay
Yeah,
view.
of course.
S- So, okay, but like, so the alpine climates, right? So you mentioned northern Italy, but then there's Switzerland right there, but you can't go to Switzerland. You can't go to Switzerland. You can't go to Austria. You can't go to Germany. There really are no golden visa programs for there.
No, once again, you don't need a golden visa to move to Europe. There are separate paths, even if you are not working. But yeah,
Oh, what are the
to
other
my
paths?
knowledge,
I mean,
these
because
countries.
I mean, I know you can get a tourist visa, but then you have to leave periodically, right? So, like, if you actually wanted to
Of
stay,
course.
what do you
Is
do in
this
these other
um
countries?
is this alternative visa that I was telling you called non-lucrative or financially independent person, where you need to show that you have enough sufficient means to sustain yourself? Not every country has this, so it's more common in countries that they do like to attract still foreign retirees, perhaps even have some tax incentives. But so it's not, I cannot tell you that every country in Europe has these ones. This is not true, but um, all of those that we mentioned, Spain, Portugal, um, Italy, Greece, France, they do have a visa in place which allows you to move there permanently if you can demonstrate that basically you have enough money to do it effectively. It's not an incredibly high threshold.
Oh, right. Okay, so France also has that. So you can actually move to France if you can demonstrate you have enough recurring income
You
to
can.
support yourself in the country. Uh-huh. Okay.
Yes,
So
exactly.
so we've rattled off a bunch of names of beautiful places that a lot of people might be interested in going. How do people typically pick a place to go? Do you help them with that, or how does that work?
Absolutely, absolutely. That's a very good question. I'm thinking that often people start with places that they have been to, they have good memories of. Perhaps, I've also had clients that told me about something they saw on TV, some documentaries, and they were really, really fascinated. So I think, getting that first understanding of what you could like in terms of, obviously aesthetics and lifestyle, that's really good. There needs to be a match, right? You wouldn't want to go to a place that you think you're not gonna like. But effectively, that's just the starting point, in the sense that this needs to be paired with, first of all, a good understanding, still staying with the lifestyle, but a good understanding of how lifestyle actually works when you live there permanently. So speaking of Greece, that we have mentioned a few times, I've had clients tell me, retired clients that told me that they wanted to go to a small remote island where they went in summer and it was really beautiful. And I tell them, for sure, but try to go back in the winter, just because once again, especially when we speak about countries that or like destinations within countries that are heavily exposed to tourism, then obviously the lifestyle throughout the year could change significantly based on the tourist season. So that's, all of those first um, uh, getting clarity on how your life actually would be from a lifestyle perspective, that's important. But this should be definitely matched with a bit more of let's say, analytical approach to make sure, first of all, that you qualify. So we were talking about visas, obviously. So you need to actually make sure that your income slash savings will get you a visa. Because if you cannot live there, then it doesn't even make sense starting to think too much about it, right? So that's the real number one. Taxation is another one, in the sense that even if you still need to pay some taxes in the States, once you move permanently to a country, you become a tax resident there. You will need to pay taxes there. Most of these countries do have dual tax agreement with the United States, meaning that you're not going to be taxed twice on the same thing, but still you will be taxed in the country, for the difference. So obviously, if a country, has taxes you 30%, and in the States you're taxed 10, you still would need to pay 20% difference. So getting that understanding of actually how getting tax resident in a country will impact your net income, that's really important, because clearly then has, a very important consequence on your, on your capacity for cost of living, to support your cost of living. So and understanding how that work, and as a result also doing a cost of living analysis, that's very important. And I would, there's many other aspects, but one important one that I would mention, especially for retirees, is healthcare. Once you move to a country in Europe, you're not going to get automatically access to healthcare. So it's really critical to understand what are your rights today, like versus also in a few years when you get private permanent residency, in terms of access to public healthcare. As we know, most European countries have a public healthcare system where, though, this is not necessarily available to everyone just because they live there. So perhaps either you need to pay something, or you might not get access at all. So that first question is quite critical. And then what's the quality of it? Can you supplement with private coverage? Is it available for those above a certain age? Because sometimes, new healthcare policies are not always available above 70, for example. So all of that understanding in terms of short-term and long-term planning around healthcare needs is also quite critical. So once again, just to summarize, lifestyle is wonderful, and I do spend a lot of time on it, but it's also that kind of bureaucracy and eligibility and, those harder questions that they're better asked earlier.
Right. Well, go there in winter. That's very good advice. I tell people buy a house in the winter time, right? I mean, like that's, you'll like have a really good idea what it's like at the bad time of year if you actually spend some time there when it's, not sunny and warm. So, You mentioned that these countries will oftentimes want to see like an income of like 30,000, euros to support yourself while you're living there. That seems very, very low, which makes me think that the cost of living must be very, very low if that's all they're looking for. So like, what countries really do have like a really affordable, cost of living in Europe where like, I mean, because a lot of people won't buy, they'll rent, right? So rent, and then you talk about medical care, like. I think that even if you were to go and pay cash to see a doctor in Europe, it would be a fraction of what it would cost here to go see a doctor. So, what are some of those costs, like rent and medical care, just out of pocket costs? What are those likely to be for somebody looking to get like a one bedroom apartment in somewhere inside of Europe?
Absolutely. Great question. It's hard to really give a number to a country. As we were saying, take Italy. Milan in northern Italy is extremely expensive. I think rental is going to be very hard to find some rental opportunities below 1,000 euros per month. Um, Dining out, I would say 60, 70 euros per person minimum. I mean, except, if you're having in a small taverna a little pizza, but, if you want to have a normal dinner, that's what you're looking at. And you compare it to the south of Italy, where you can also find some rental for 350, 400 euros. And, you can eat out for 25 euros. So getting a good understanding of actually that breakdown and the lifestyle that you can support is quite critical. As you say, the requirement for visa not necessarily reflects then what your actual spending would be. So, it's a very good translation to do and analysis to do earlier on. But it's true that compared to the United States, most Southern European destinations tend to offer very good saving opportunities. In terms of healthcare, also just because you mentioned, obviously, quite critical to do that analysis before. If I give you an example for Greece, Greece, there are two very different options that you can do. There is an option to pay for effectively access to the public sector with some annual caps, which are around 10K, which last, there's quite high for the public sector in Greece. And this policy, it makes me laugh because every time I say this to Americans, they're like quite confused. This policy is around 180 euros per year. And they're like, per month, perhaps it would be already very cheap. So with 180 per year, you can get some access to the public sector, to public sector health. Obviously, that's has a risk because if you spend above that maximum threshold, that's fully out of pocket. And so for those that want to go for a private option, instead, we're looking at around 2,000 per year, which is still very low compared to the States, right? But that's a bit
Yes.
more reasonable.
Yeah. Well, all that sounds very affordable to me, and I think to a lot of people. I mean, well, so I'm in the Bay Area, right, where like the costs for everything are just, stratospheric. So, I mean, all these numbers sound like, really very attractive. Now, how about like the language barrier? Like, if you're trying to go to see a doctor in Greece, or like anybody in Italy, I mean, like, what do people end up doing? Do people actually, which this is sounds strange to an American, to actually learn another language, right? I mean, like, do people actually do that, or how do they get by in a country where they may not speak the language?
Yeah, people do learn, but that's also part of the initial decision making. There are some countries where English is either first language or still fully spoken, like in Malta and Cyprus. Some others where it's, especially with younger people, it's quite well spoken, like Greece. I was surprised to learn about Greece because you think about those very traditional people not wanting to learn English. Actually, there is an index. It's called EF index, which is about like issued by the Education First, so one of the biggest language schools in the world. And they rank Greece, I think, number 7 or 8 globally in terms of English level proficiency, which is really cool. So once again, Greece, I think, is still fine if you want to go and be a bit lazy in terms of learning. Also, because Greek is really hard. I've had to learn for my husband, so not recommend. But well, you can do it. Italy, unfortunately, I mean, Italians are a bit lazy about English. Um, perhaps, one of the reasons that we have found is that Italy is around 60 million people versus Greece 10. So the movies, the games, they're not dubbed in Greece. They just get subtitles, which means that people kind of get it from when they're young, being exposed to, obviously English speaking movies and everything else. Whereas in Italy, this does not happen. So it's part of the equation. Obviously, for urgent things, you would find someone for medical care. For those that don't speak Italian, I do recommend to get some private healthcare because clearly in private clinics, you will find definitely English-speaking staff. In a public hospital, it depends.
Well, your English is pretty phenomenal. How did you learn English? If you're Italian,
Well, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. I have lived abroad now for 12 years. So I've had some opportunities to learn. Now I'm based in London, as I was telling you, but it's just the last let's say days, now proper fixed base. But I've lived in Switzerland, in Brazil, in Thailand, in Spain, in Russia, in Bangladesh, short term. So yeah, obviously by traveling around a lot, I got the chance to practice a little bit.
so
I forgot all my Italian though.
right. Well,
Hopefully the interviews
I'm
are in
sure it will
Italian
come
because I'm
back.
like, I'm not great.
And so you lived in all these places when you're working with JP Morgan Chase. Is that who sent you abroad to all these different places, or is this after that?
Partly JP Morgan. There was two countries, although I was actually traveling a lot, especially when covering governments, because clearly governments want to do business in person. So there was kind of always on a plane. The previous ones was also, previous work opportunities, a master's, this kind of previous life.
All right, previous life. Yeah,
Before
okay.
JP Morgan, life before and after, right? It's like,
Life before and after JP Morgan. Right. Okay. So,
exactly.
yeah, you're friends in global banking, I guess. So, all right. So now, like in Mexico, there's a famous place called San Miguel de Allende. Have you heard of San Miguel de Allende?
I've actually been to San Miguel de Allende.
No, I've
Yes.
never been to San Miguel de Allende. I've been to Mexico many times. It's my favorite country. Anybody asks me like, what's my favorite country? I've been to 52 countries, and Mexico's number one. But San Miguel de Allende is famous because there's a lot of Americans living there, and like it's I've never been, but I'm told like it's like a little America. And so, are there places like San Miguel de Allende, like in Europe, where like an American could go and like sort of feel at home, I guess?
They're growing. I wouldn't say probably the same. Clearly, the proximity of Mexico and also some other Caribbean hotspots, or Costa Rica. I know that there are like very big American communities that really settle kind of down. I think in Europe they're growing. If I had to think about Greece, probably I would say Crete, close to Chania. I have seen similar communities of Europeans, German, English. So at least, English you could probably find the closest perhaps. American communities, they are so large, I haven't seen them yet, but I do expect that they will grow.
So the English community. So where do the English hang out? We like English. I love English. The English are the best, right? So, so
I like them as well. Well,
where do they hang out?
because where we started at the beginning, speaking about Spain, I would say that the coast of Spain is where you can find a lot of these communities, even Mallorca sometimes, because this
So
is really seen now over 10 years of influx of people. So by now you do see small communities, really.
so throw out some names of towns on the Spanish coast where we might find like a lot of English people living.
I mean, some areas, for example, close to Malaga, or once again, close to Palma de Mallorca. There are small villages, but if you move
Small
around, if you travel,
small
you
little
will find them.
villages. You'll find them.
Yeah.
And so so Portugal, so I mean Portugal is like currently the hot spot, right? And so like and then I can't remember anything anymore, but the names of these cities, these beach towns in Portugal. So are a lot of those actually full of expat English speakers nowadays?
Yeah, I would say Portugal actually is, I mean, within Europe, is the one that perhaps has attracted now the highest number of Americans. I mean, Lisbon is definitely a hotspot. So it's also the capital, so I cannot say that it's really just an American community, right? You hear a lot of English, but clearly there's also still Portuguese and other people working there. Algarve is in the south, a beautiful coastal destination. This looks like paradise, and it's also there has many expats as well. Many Americans, also some Scandis, Europeans. So it's a good mix up. But definitely, once again, it's if there are some people that tell me, I just want to like be far from Americans or from the country where I come from. So actually, some people really ask for the opposite, like of trying to be not secluded, but like have their own privacy and then have opportunities to mix with the locals and to get their own authentic life there. But if there are some other people that prefer, to move abroad, but equally still tap into the, culture and community that is perhaps a bit more known from the country where they come from. And in that case, it's possible definitely to find that, even if they're not full villages, but at least you find a few families that have bought houses together, and that's a very good place to start. You were asking me before how I help people choose. So despite, on top of all that kind of coaching, what we were discussing, lifestyle, bureaucracy, it's paired with that idea that I said, go in the winter, or at least go travel. So one of the things that some people do before actually, taking a decision is to take a scouting trip. So it's not really a holiday, it's going with the idea of accomplishing something. So it could be like finding that community, meeting some experts, seeing property, live with a live like a local, rent something, and I don't know, try to go to a hospital. Obviously you're not planning for that, but it kind of puts you in the situation of like how do I feel being an expat here? Do I find the right support, and can I get around, kind of thing? So it's definitely possible to kind of start planning with the idea of finding a community where you feel home.
Right. Okay. So also early in the conversation, you mentioned digital nomads living in Dubai, and a lot of people who are in their 60s and 70s, they don't want to retire necessarily, right? They want to stay active doing something, and so maybe they do have digital nomad businesses kind of like you, right? I mean, you're a little bit of a digital
Mm-hmm.
nomad, right? So like, what is it like being a digital nomad in these countries? Like, is it considered illegal? Do you need a work permit then in order to be a digital nomad? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, absolutely. Several countries do have digital nomad visas, so they're quite convenient because clearly it's, you know, for European Union, it's quite challenging to get a work visa. So having this opportunity to come as like, with the right to work, but remotely, it's a very nice shortcut in a way. Um, Several places, Portugal is one of them. They do have very big digital nomad communities because Portugal did remove all the tax incentives for retirees starting this year because they wanted to kind of tame it, but they did keep it for innovative businesses, startups. So a lot of people are going and finding that kind of community. There are, co-working spaces, events. There's a lot of it's a trendy and growing, movement, if you want. And the good thing of, if you do come from obviously European countries, that often then from a healthcare perspective, you could also be covered if you are registered in one of the countries. Obviously, this is not the case for Americans, but I have seen quite a good mobility within Europe because of this consideration of also being able to kind of stay in the system from that perspective.
Well, how do they even know that you're a digital nomad? Like, what do they do? Are they like tapping into your like Starlink connection to see that you're like conducting business from Zoom calls or
No, it's more. I mean, obviously, if you do need a visa, then you will need to kind of prove that you're employed. So, having the contract, having some pay slips. There are some official declarations that you should not work within the local economy. But then, obviously, I mean, effectively, they do give you a visa, but they do see if you start working as a local. So I guess that's, it works more as an exclusion, I guess, than
well, that's
anything
that's
else.
like if you're like employed by somebody. But what if you're like self-employed and you just, like you just have your whatever podcast that you do or, relocation service that you do out of your apartment? I mean, does that require like a work visa in most places in Europe? I mean, you're working. You're not getting any
So
local money. It's not local revenue.
no, absolutely. I think it's also, very useful to understand if you want to live somewhere permanently or if you kind of just want to spend some time there because Americans have obviously, visa-free travel in Europe. So you could come for, the thresholds are 90 days every 180 days. So to the extent you stay within these limits, everything is a little bit easier. You don't need to gain residency. You don't need to get tax residency as well, which is, there are the two different sides of the coin. The right to leave, but then once you spend 6 months, you also need to pay taxes. So if you just spend a few months, that's really easy, and no one is really checking if you're working or not. It becomes a little bit more complex if you're fully registered in the system, and then the rights and obligation and how to prove it changes a little bit country by country. So, for example, in Greece, with this financial independent person or the golden visa, you cannot work in the system in the local economy, but you can still do some online business. But some other countries like Italy, they're very strict about it, that they do not want people on the equivalent, let's say, visa to work in Italy, because there is a digital nomad path. So they really want to keep them separate. It's useful if you're a bit in a gray area. It's useful to speak with an expert, get an immigration lawyer advice to really understand what's the best path.
Wow, sounds kind of complicated. So you also earlier you were mentioning
Sorry.
these. It's okay. It's all right. Well, that's probably why you're in business. So earlier you were mentioning some Facebook groups where people can go and talk to other people who have moved to Europe or Asia or wherever. Like, can you tell me what some of those Facebook groups might be?
Sorry, can I tell you what? What?
You mentioned that like there's a lot of like relocate to Europe or abroad
Yeah.
Facebook groups. What can you tell us the names of some of those Facebook groups if people wanted to go and like join those groups and sort of get their
Oh,
feet
yeah.
wet?
I mean, they're like the most basic names, like expats in Greece or expats in Spain, retiring in Spain. I'm sure that someone who wants to find them finds them. They have usually, very, very big numbers of registered people. Not everyone is active, but I think I mean, it's a very nice initiative to see what people are asking, to understand what you need, to ask for some questions as well. But I wouldn't take it as, necessarily gold, whatever is written there. It's like whatever you find on the internet. You trust it, but take it with a little bit of grain of salt. Also because, I mean, it could be also that people tell you the truth, which perhaps was the truth for them, but regulations do change. It's quite mobile, quite hard to stay up to date. So especially for, detailed aspects like tax, immigration, I always recommend working with an expert.
Right. Okay. And so so you're an expert. So like how do people normally start working with you? Like let's just say, you know what, I've just been listening to this podcast and it sounds great, but man, there's a lot of moving parts. I, like I don't want to like waste a lot of time and money like doing it the wrong way. And so I'm gonna talk to somebody like Federica Grazzi, who's an expert. How do people normally start working with you? Like at what point do they call you or to get a Zoom call or like what does that process look like?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that, usually they first need to reach out through the website. I have a website called meetorelocation.com where they can, start getting an idea of perhaps where they are in the process, what I can do for them. But it always starts with a call to understand how to really help people. And this is something that I haven't at all automatized. I really give a lot of value to that first call because someone might, at the beginning have people coming to me and saying, I want to start the relocation. And then we started the relocation and then realized that actually they needed something a bit earlier, that clarity package, for example. So that first call is usually around half an hour. And it's really useful to kind of test also a little bit the assumptions of the client, understand if they have done, how the quality of the pre-work they've done, and assist them, and also perhaps give them a little bit of an initial timeline because I have people that start reaching out to me 2 years before they want to move, and I'm like, I love it, but it's a bit too early because laws might change, so I don't want to make them pay for something that it could go to waste. So it's also that's kind of a very good alignment call. And then if people do move forward, I always start with a very detailed survey so that everything is out, all the questions, all the knowledge, and there's no red flags, and then we kick off. It could be with some initial coaching to kind of confirm that the country is right for them. Some people are like, let's kick off, let's get the visa appointments, let's get all the bureaucracy lined up. So yeah, that's the best way to start. Book a call.
Okay, so start with a call. So like do you actually end up like taking them to countries or do you have like a network of people that you like work with in different countries so that they can say, okay, I'm landing in, wherever, Lisbon, can you have someone help me, like a concierge, to like introduce me to like life as an expat in Lisbon, say, or how does that work?
Absolutely, absolutely. No, I don't do everything myself. I'm doing a lot, but but I definitely do work with some local people. I mean, they're not part of the team in terms of hire people, but it's very close relationship. So I'm not just handing off clients to other people. I stay in the coordination, and I just make sure everything goes well. But yeah, I do have local people, both for some, as you say, the more concierge aspect, going to see apartments, or um, you know it's a bit more hand holding at some appointments where they need to go for sure in person, but it's nice to just have someone with you to tell you which line is the right one, and so on. Obviously, it's also about everything that is regulated work. Once again, tax advisors, they need to be local when you do want to make the change in tax residency, get registered in a tax system. That it will always need to be someone local. So effectively, my role is to sit in the middle, make sure everything goes, flows correctly, connect the dots, um, and make the planning as well. The timeline is actually understated, but quite important to make sure everything flows well in terms of appointments, taxation, and so on. And then when it's needed, we also work with some local professionals for add-on things like the tax residency, or once again, some real estate aspects, and etc.
So can
But
you help
also
people
just
oh,
sorry, I just wanted to say, because obviously the concierge gives the idea that every client that moves abroad is necessarily a super high net worth individual, and that's not. Like, I want to demystify a little bit this myth that you need to be extremely rich to move abroad. And this is in a way reflected in my packages. I do have things that are very VIP, white glove, if people want that. But I also have some that are like, I give you, the what you need to know to make sure, things are not going wrong. But then the rest is kind of DIY if you want. So I just want to make sure that it's also out there, because it's a myth that I've heard very often.
well, I mean, I think that that a lot of Americans will want to move to Europe because they understand it is much less expensive, right? I mean, like, so in other words, like I mean, that kids have a lot of them might not choose. Like if you're a billionaire, maybe you would want to stay in Miami, But
Yeah,
if you are just a normal person who is trying to retire on, $60,000 a year, you're not going to be very comfortable retiring in the United States on $60,000 a year, right? Which isn't a lot of
yeah,
money, but you might be much more comfortable retiring in Europe on $60,000 a year. So I think that most
absolutely.
people who are watching this or listening to this would, I mean, they're not expecting that they're going to have like, a Rolls Royce to drive them around from place to place in Europe. I think they're just looking for a helping hand because, I mean, a lot of Americans really haven't traveled very much, right? I mean, they say that like
Mm,
two-thirds of Americans don't even own a passport, right? Something like that, right? It's a shocking number. So I think that a lot of Americans, they would like, I say concierge service, maybe it's a fancy name, but I, I think that they would appreciate a local
the hand
person wherever
holding.
they're. Yes, I mean at least for
Yeah,
like a little bit, right? So like
totally.
where I mean, do you operate in every town in Europe, or like what if they have like some small town? Like how granular can you get with helping somebody like find their way to maybe some of these little beach towns in along the Spanish coast?
Yeah, no, it's a good question, and obviously, a strategic challenge to make sure that if you cover a country, then you really cover it. So what I've done is kind of an organic growth. So in Italy and in Greece, I have a bigger network. So in all the hotspots, I would have someone to ask to. If it's something very remote, then it might be just an extra charge so that the people can get there. But that's the starting point. And I have a few other countries where I'm saying I'm offering partial services. A lot of the coaching can be done, a lot of the initial things can be done, but then not everything in terms of local presence is there yet. So that's what I'm doing, kind of growing by obviously by demand, and by just the time to get that network.
Right.
Once you give that name, you want to make sure that there is a trust, and not just cannot just find someone online that claims to be able to help and then give them my clients. So it's a trust business, and it's very important to to do time to time well the growth.
Right, for sure. Okay, so like how much does it cost to work with you or, whatever? I mean, like is this not a free service that you provide? I assume.
Mm,
Do you pay like by the hour or are there packages that you get or like how does that work?
No, absolutely. I do offer packages, depending on on the path where people are, because once again, at the end is the relocation, but things might start with just some coaching. But let's say for the earlier stage coaching before the move, we're looking at a starting point of around $1,000. Whereas for the relocation itself, all in all, including also the visa fees and everything, we generally start at 5K. And then for the more white glove concierge, it could also double up to 10.
Okay. So visa fees and all that. So like I mean, we mentioned visa fees, but that does that not include like I imagine there's a immigration attorneys or is that not part of the situation when you move to Europe
Yeah.
if you need immigration attorneys? I don't know.
So that's a little bit my proposition, that once you know actually how things work, and you've seen them many times, sometimes you still need, a professional. Sometimes no. So for visas, I see relocation attorneys that cover us for $2,000 just to get a visa, which is something actually pretty straightforward. So I tell people, if you want to get that peace of mind, obviously I can facilitate it, but it's also empowering people to do things a little bit on their own with the right guidance. So I might give them very detailed guidance, steps, and blueprints of how other people have done it, and perhaps then they just do it themselves.
So how long does it typically take for somebody to actually like make a move to Europe? Okay, let's just say that all the time they spent thinking about it, let's not count that, but from the time they say, I'm moving to Europe to the
I'm
time they
ready.
actually arrive, like, is this like a years long process typically, or is this really more like 3 months, 6 months, 9 months? I mean, maybe there's no average, but like, what can people expect in terms of how long all this might take to get through all the visa and yada, yada, yada?
Yeah, I usually recommend 6 to 9 months. 9 is better to start. 6 is really the minimum. Clearly, I mean, you did mention the right thing. The main bottleneck is the visa, consulate appointment. So it depends what's there. If there's nothing, then you're stuck, and you need to wait until the new ones are released. So that's kind of the big bet in terms of when you'll be able. But yeah, 9 months on average is a good way to start. If people reach out to me 1 year earlier, then it's even better. Anyway, once again, I don't work by the hour. I work by results. So the cost is the same, and it's just gonna be a little bit more peace of mind for everyone. So yeah, that's even fine.
Right. So maybe it might be a good idea, given how long it takes to like go over there on a tourist visa, spend 3 months of winter in some town.
It's spring is fine, okay. Not
And
all
then
rain.
and then you have to leave after 3 months, but you get to leave to go to somewhere else in Europe, right? You don't have to leave the EU, right? You just go to some other country in Europe after 90 days. Is that correct?
Well, actually, not really.
No, you have to leave
So
the
the
EU
nine
now.
is you need to leave Schengen. So
Right.
you have 90 days in Schengen, which is most of the EU and some other countries, Switzerland, a few others. So you can go to a country that is non-Schengen. So, for example, if you're in Greece, you could go to Albania, which is non-European Union, non-Schengen. But yeah,
You can go to
you
England. England
cannot
is not
go.
Schengen. England's not Schengen anymore, is it? The
But that's
UK?
right.
They're
That's
out,
right.
right?
Yes,
Yes.
you can come to the UK in the winter. It might be a bit dark, but sure.
Well, but it's actually not that cold like in London, right? I mean, like it's not that
No,
cold, right? Yeah, it's
it's not
fine.
that calm. And to be honest, I mean, speaking of climate change being true or not, I don't know, but definitely the weather in the UK has improved dramatically over the past few years.
Yeah, that's what I'm told. I'm told it's becoming quite balmy in the UK, and
Yeah, I mean, look at me. I'm like mid-September without sleeps. It's like really sunny day, probably 22, 23 degrees. It's really nice.
right. For people who don't know what that means, that's like 74,
Sorry.
75.
Yeah, I haven't learned the translation yet.
Well, you'll have to get used to that if you're going to be moving to the United Kingdom. All right. Well, is there one last piece of advice that you can leave with anybody who is like, like starting to get serious about making that move? What one or two things you want people to take away from this conversation that we've had?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say take your time. It's a wonderful move. that is well done with the right knowledge. So as you said, take a move to go, take a move to speak with even other people that have made the move, obviously with experts, and then to just have a little bit of mental flexibility, both in terms of the timeline of how it would be to settle in. People tend to get out of it really, really happy of the experience. But it is a process. So starting with a little bit of mental flexibility and with some preparation, I think will make it a very good move for most people.
All right. Very, very good. Okay. Well, Federica, thank you so much for joining me here on 60 Plus Uncensored. I really do appreciate it. And again, your website is Mythos Travel. Like, what's the URL? Mythosrelocation.com.
Mythosrelocation.com. That's right. Thank you
All
so much.
right.
It's been
Very
great
good.
being here.
Thank you so much. Okay. We'll catch you on the flip side. All right, that's a wrap for this episode of 60 Plus Uncensored. Huge thanks to Federica Grazzi for setting the tone with such honesty and insight. Now, if you like this episode, do me a favor and do Federica a favor. Hit the subscribe button, leave a review, and then share it with someone you know who needs to hear it. And by the way, if you know anyone who's over 60 and still out there doing big things, living boldly, working with purpose, or maybe retiring abroad, or just living life on their own terms, I would love to hear from you. Reach out at team60plus.com or join the conversation at 60 Plus Uncensored on Reddit. I'm Seb Fry, and this is 60 Plus Uncensored, because as we're learning, life after 60 isn't the end, it's just getting good.
Subscribe now.